Okay, my name's Jack. Thank you very, very much for having me this evening. I'd like to echo what Miles says. It's really amazing that you guys are all here and we're talking about innovation. There's a lot of challenges ahead, and I hope you're up for some of them. A little bit about me. I'm not the brightest of medics. I haven't done an awful lot as far as postgraduate exams, etc. But I spend half of my life in London. I'm the medical director of a place called the Centre for Health and Human Performance, about 40 specialists and scientists working together to tackle complex cases using technology and data. And we'll talk about how to gather that data a bit later on. The other half of my life is in Silicon Valley in California, where I get to meet clever people who work at places like Google and who are really kind of changing the way that we practice medicine, really disrupting the way that we have to pay for it. Before I begin, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a real inspiration, a technology innovator who I was privileged enough to work for whilst I was still a medical student. It's a well-known fact that the entire repository of all the knowledge and wisdom in the universe is not actually Wikipedia, but in fact the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Of course, written by the late great Douglas Adams, who created a very, very cool concept a long, long time ago before we had these guys. And that is that within the minds of all of us observers, we could create a compendium of information, a canon of knowledge that didn't belong to a particular profession or a particular industry leader, but belonged to us. He called it the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It actually was. Has anyone read the book? Okay, fewer and fewer people each year put their hands up as this happens. It's scary. Anyway, go Google it. But in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the actual guide is a mobile device, and it contains all the knowledge of life, the universe, and everything within it. And it was whilst I was working with Douglas, converting the concept of the Hitchhiker's Guide from a book into an actual technology and to an actual website, that I really found my passion for information technology and knew that medicine could learn a lot from the kind of ideas that Douglas had and the applicability of universal knowledge to the profession. Do you know what this is? This is the Hippocratic Oath, created by, obviously, you know who, in 370 BC, and things have changed quite a bit since this time, but only really very recently in medicine. It's almost all down to technology, and latterly information technology, or computing. Anyone know what Moore's law is? Anybody? Go on.
Computing power doubles every 18 months.
For the same dollar, basically. Yeah. So the price of computing is doubling, but basically every year. Well, it's actually increasing more than that. It's a proper exponential increase in our capabilities of understanding data. But we really have to start thinking not as doctors, as we have done since Hippocrates' time, but as innovators. And thinking exponentially is quite a difficult thing for us human brains. Question. Here's a penny. How many exponential steps, that means how many times, if you doubled this penny's value every day, so tomorrow it became 2 pennies and the next day it became 4, how many days would it take till you had $1 trillion, £1 trillion in your bank account? How many years? Any idea? Come on, give us a guess. It's just 40 days. Exactly. And this is what exponential acceleration in technology is all about. We have to understand that the miniaturization and the power of computing is helping us completely transform the way that we communicate with each other, the way we gather information, the way we understand that information, and how we can apply that back to make medicine better. Genomics is an extremely good example of that. It cost $1 billion to sequence your genome just over a decade ago. Now you can spit on a stick, and there are companies in Oxford and some in Silicon Valley where an hour later you'll have your whole genome sequenced for $1,000. This is pretty crazy. In a few years' time it'll be $100, and sooner or later you'll be able to do it for a tenner. This is what exponential acceleration in technology is all about. That's how you guys have to start thinking. What are the opportunities out there with this technology and how fast it's changing? The iPhone. Quite a lot of computing power in there. Same amount of compute power as in the entire Saturn space project. Okay, it's not that many years ago. Innovations that are happening as a result of this kind of digital health revolution. Apps, obviously, everyone talks about health apps. Well, we're seeing how applicable they really are. Social networks, understanding how they work, using that to collaborate, access to knowledge. Big data analytics, all this data that's coming in, the absolutely incredible numbers of petabytes of data that we're producing on a daily basis. What does that mean? Can it help us transform the way we practice medicine? Does it give us new understandings of how drugs are working or not working in individual people or individual genotypes? We need very sophisticated computational systems to help us understand that. Remote monitoring devices like this. I'm going to strip because the one I had in my pocket I've lost. Anyone seen one of these? Biopatches, very cool. So currently this thing is transmitting at 1,000 hertz. My heart rate variability, my body temperature, my posture, my respiratory rate, my oxygen sats into the cloud via my phone. It's pretty cool. Well, if you're a geek. Passive remote monitoring is going to completely transform the way we practice medicine. It will be an ICU on your skin. Why is it special? First of all, because there is a critical mass of geeks. Secondly, there is a huge hunger to change the world. There is a greed from venture capitalists. But there is an absolute alignment between the universities, the healthcare industries, and the business, the people that want to make the money or save the money. And this is one point I just want to hang on to for one sec. If you are an MD from Stanford University, and you are not involved in 3 or 4 cool startups, there's something wrong with you. Here, if you say to your boss, I want to do a startup, and I want to take a bit of time out, or, take a few hours out of my week to do this, will you support me? Will you fund me? They'll look at you and go, no way. Well, maybe Miles might. He might say yes. But we've got a problem, and it's your job to make sure that you change the agenda. You've got to align these 3 pieces. And the 5th thing is a slight kind of attitude change. Anyone know who this is? Yeah, the film, The Big Lebowski. I personally think that we need a little bit of that kind of West Coast hippie mentality as well. You've got to believe that you can do it. If you don't believe it, it won't happen. Okay, you've got to be quite chilled. He didn't do much, I know he was kind of laid back. But at the same time, he had that kind of, sort of, this is possible. And I think that's a very important ingredient that perhaps culturally we're missing in this country. We're smaller than California. We've got a lot of people in it. We've got, hunger, I believe. We've got greed as well, but I don't think VCs are as adventurous. I struggle to get money out of venture capital firms. I don't in the US. It's pretty easy. Took me about 4 or 5 years to raise a couple of million quid in the UK. Took me 6 months to raise $50 million. That's kind of the difference. Same company. I just moved it from Old Street to the West Coast. That is the difference. But I think that get bright ideas and a critical mass, we can change that. We do actually have good alignment in a lot of ways. The pieces of the puzzle are there. And I think we are changing from scepticism and a can't-do mentality to a can-do one. But this is really, really important. What makes the NHS special is that it's big. It's the biggest integrated delivery network in the world. I know you can't book across the country for a simple thing like an appointment, but we are 60 million, 65 million folk, and we all belong to the same care network. It might be broken financially, but that's actually an opportunity. Okay, there is a desperate need for solutions, and that's actually not a problem. That is an opportunity for us. We've got the 3 Million Lives project. I think it kind of is on hold at the moment, but it's being kick-started. It's how to use wireless technology to keep people out of hospital with chronic disease or those with the most complex conditions. And that's a huge market for us. If there was a 3 Million Life project out in like a business proposal that was put out in the States, every single company would be all over it trying 3 million lives improved. The brains, there's all over the country. We've got some brilliant out there, you guys in the room, both doctors and scientists and IT guys and engineers. And there's tons of really cool incentives. If you're thinking about starting up a company, there's fantastic things like the Enterprise Investment Scheme, the Small Enterprise Investment Scheme. You've got wonderful things like the £500 million East Anglia University, Anglia Ruskin University now, MedTech Park, which is going to be the world's first MedTech only dedicated incubator for medical technologies and computational medicine, being headed up on the medical side by Professor Tony Young, who is the first chair of medical innovation in the UK. If you want more information on it, Google it. And you've got fantastic tax rebates and IP opportunities from the government as well. There's tons of good reasons to not be doing this in the States, do this in the UK. Okay, I'm gonna play a little video now, just to break it up a bit and to close. And this is talking about whether digital health works. It's my hypothesis that it's going to transform the way that medicine is practiced and transform how much it costs. But here's a little thing that I did for the BBC. I don't know how to do this. Wow.
And people are taking self-monitoring to new levels, as Jem finds out.
There are some impressive gadgets on the market that record everything from blood pressure to stress levels. But can self-monitoring 24/7 actually help our health? To try and find out, I'm setting up my own life logging experiment. This is the Hot family. Dad Steve, Mum Kate, kids Emily and Oliver, and Grandad Tom. They're going to be the first people in the UK to trial the Metria sensor, a brand new device promising to be the ultimate accessory for any serious self-tracker.
Hey, oh, the guinea pigs, right. Good, you guys are in for a surprising week. Yeah, so what you're going to be using is a prototype unavailable to anybody else. Nobody in this country has done this experiment yet. Okay? And what happens is an incredibly high-tech sensor gets stuck on your left-hand side, just below the device, which is detecting your heart rate, your respiration, your breathing rate, and the G forces you're being subjected to. And then all of that gets Bluetoothed to these tablets.
Oh no, competition begins here.
I was worried somebody might say that, because the thing is, I'm going to have one too. What do you reckon, Oliver? Your job is to oversee this. Make sure that they don't take their sensor off and shake it to make out they're incredible athletes or anything like that. Okay, now you each get a tablet, Tom.
Thank you.
We'll wear these sensors 24 hours a day for an entire week.
Any signs of life?
They'll monitor our activity at work, rest and play.
Good. Right. I'm really intrigued to discover how my life in numbers shapes up to how I kind of imagine it being.
I think it might be a bit of a wake-up call in some ways that you think,
I think you're probably right.
So that's it. We're now all patched up and connected to computers. I guess we just lead our everyday lives and see what we learn in the next 7 days.
In the meantime, to find out about the benefits of self-monitoring, I'm meeting with GP and medical gadget expert, Dr. Jack Kreindler.
I'm not a GP.
And what do these various gadgets and devices do?
Well, we've got a whole range here, ranging from medical devices through things that can help you monitor your lifestyle.
The thing that's particularly striking about what's here is the size of it all.
Well, interesting you say that. Maybe a few years ago, you're measuring something like your ECG, your heart tracing.
Yeah.
You'd have to go to a hospital, you'd have to have an expert wire you up to a machine like this. But now, I have one of these, which is just a simple smartphone cover, but in fact, it has a clinical grade ECG monitor on it. So if you've got an arrhythmia, a normal rhythm of your heart, you can now check that, and you have something that a doctor would understand instantly that you can send to him that would normally have to be printed out from here.
So what strikes me is you could almost put a roof over this table, and that's a hospital.
We've got an incredible opportunity with this kind of technology becoming ever smaller, ever more powerful, ever more accurate, and ever more useful to the profession, that we can transform the way we practice medicine by collecting the data, understanding it, and acting earlier, making better decisions before we get ill.
So how about our own trial with high-tech gadgetry? For the past 7 days, our breathing, movement, and every heartbeat has been captured and logged by the sensors, while we got on with our everyday lives.
Your temperature, your blocked nose, it's all yourself trying to get yourself better.
Now, the Hot family and I are back to see Dr. Jack to analyse our results. With our daily lifestyles laid bare, will there be any surprises?
We've got a whole load of really interesting things that your devices have picked up. You can see some amongst us have been doing a little bit more running around than others. So, Jem, you trained for a marathon?
No, that's Saturday. I'm looking after kids on Saturday.
Oh, I see. Excellent. Nearly 16,000 steps equivalent, so a pretty active day. So here are the averages. We've got Tom, nearly 6,000 steps a day.
That's good for me. Probably going to walk down the park.
And Kate there is nearly doing double that amount, which is really quite extraordinary.
I work in a big hospital, so when I'm actually at work, there's lots of walking
A
around.
lot of running around. Should we also have a look at something that I found very interesting, which was your sleep? Tom, on average, over the week, you got about 6.8, nearly 7 hours. Steve, 7.3.
Take that.
Emily had a grand 9.5 hours of sleep, which doesn't surprise me at all, because you do most of your growing as a child when you're asleep. Now, Kate, how many hours of sleep were you meant to get a day?
About 8, I think.
Now, obviously you're managing a busy job and a big family. You're still doing okay. 6.6 hours. You had this thing for a week. Did it surprise you? Did it inform you of anything that you hadn't known before?
Never knew that my mum would actually get 10,000.
I was quite surprised that I just walked steps, and I thought I probably got the least sleep as well, so I kind of feel vindicated. All my moaning. I'm so tired.
But I think the interesting thing as well with that is it's factual.
It's data.
It's data, and in some cases it's a little bit frightening. And now we've been chatting about this, I know that sort of 5,000 odd steps a day really isn't cutting it.
Because it's all being recorded. Did you sort of try to become more active?
Yeah, we did. We tried to be more active because it was a bit like a competition. We thought instead of Steve getting in the car and going down the shops, we'll walk down the shops.
It's only a 5-minute journey, but it's that extra little bit.
It's like having a sort of a personal coach. You become your own coach. It's called biofeedback. It's the ability for you to see the results of what you're doing and then feel what it's like to be more active. And you can imagine that those things might become smaller in future, more and more invisible, last for a month before you need to recharge the batteries, all of these things. And I think that they'll become part of life.
I don't know if I'm ready to become a full-time life logger quite yet, but it was fascinating to see an entire week of my life reduced to a page full of numbers. It was also wonderful to see just how much the Hutt family enjoyed the experiment, and how it seems the very act of being monitored makes everyone more interested and indeed competitive with regard to their health.
So, just to end, using not that particular patch, but a different biosensor, one of the companies that I founded is doing some really cool stuff with computational analytics and predictive medicine in outpatients for chronic disease. So we've had 5 congestive heart failure patients being monitored in this way, and all of this kind of data is coming back to the computer. And the computer's completely agnostic to what any of this data means. It just picks up patterns, it uses neural networks or sophisticated state machines to kind of build up patterns of what's normal for an individual. And I'm pleased to say, just the other week, we avoided an incredibly expensive hospital admission with the computer telling the cardiologist looking after these 5 patients, saying, hey, I can't really tell you why, but this patient is going to hospital if you don't do something. And the cardiologist phoned up the patient. The patient seemed okay, a little bit slow on the phone. Anyway, 2 days later, the computer said, dude, you really need to look after this patient. He's really not following normal patterns. And we phoned him up again. He was really confused. They found out he was over-dialyzing himself. And the computer picked it up way before he would have been picked up by his GP or the cardiologist. They went round, they sorted out his dialysis. It was done at home. The patient was incredibly happy. Family was incredibly happy. Insurance company was incredibly happy. Saved maybe $45,000 to $60,000 as a hospital admission. So I believe that these are the kind of things that are going to really help us achieve those incredible, almost impossible goals of making medicine affordable for all of us. It may well be that cool designers make flashy-looking devices from California. It may be that they're all assembled in China. But I hope that we can put on the back of those devices that were innovated in Great Britain. Thanks.